We are going to talk with Chris Iseral about his experience with scale computing. Shortly after that, I will provide a brief overview of what we do here at Scale, and then there at the end we'll leave some room for questions. So to kind of table set, like most state and local governments, Madison County was facing many challenges with infrastructure and cloud even before the pandemic. So they had smaller IT budgets, limited IT staff. That limited IT staff had to wear a lot of hats as they supported multiple departments throughout the organization. Licensing fees kept increasing as well as software costs. Accessibility from rural areas can always be impacted. But of course, with the pandemic became the work from home initiatives as well as cyber threats and data protection that come with that. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Chris, and he is the Director of Information with Madison County and within their fiscal court. So Chris, I'll go and let you set the table here and give us a little background, and then we'll discuss why you looked at scale computing.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me, guys. I've got 16 years of experience in local government information technology. I spent a couple years with the city of Richmond, and then I spent the last 14 years as Director of IT for the Madison County Fiscal Court. We've probably been integral in building an MSP model for the last 13 years. We've been able to actually take the infrastructure that we're building with county dollars and offer those to the external county agencies that we also serve, which actually served as an income model for the fiscal court. And it's saving those other agencies dollars on infrastructure and software costs because they can take advantage of those contracts. So that's what we've been doing for the last 13 years, and we've been excited over the last, 12 to 14 months of working with Scale and the product that they've been able to provide us to actually help evolve that mission and move forward.
That was fantastic. So what were some of the unique aspects to Madison County that created challenges when you started researching new infrastructure?
Probably the biggest and most unique thing that most people don't know about Madison County, Kentucky, or they don't know this in general, is that there are actually two places where chemical munitions are actually still stored in the United States. One of those is actually Madison County, Kentucky. The other one is in Pueblo, Colorado. And what that does for us is really, it's kind of a blessing, and it's kind of also a hindrance, if you look at it that way, because there is safety and security that you have to think about as well. But with that comes lots of federal funding. And that federal funding can be used on things as technology needs, public radio infrastructures for emergency responders. It also gives us stuff for fire trucks, ambulances, you name it, right? Anything in a response, those federal dollars are paying for it.
Sure.
Basically, this is money that we're able to spend, right? So just a little bit about it. There's 523 tons of GB, VX, and mustard and projectiles and warheads that are actually stored there. And coming soon, basically, those funds will dry up. In about 3 years, about 2023 is when most of that money is supposed to stop coming to Madison County because they will have destroyed all that chemical munition at the depot. And that certainly is going to present a unique challenge for us moving forward.
Certainly. So can you kind of explain, prior to having scale computing, what did you have in place within your infrastructure?
So prior to scale computing, we actually were fortunate to have a pretty robust VMware solution. We used it extensively for our server production, and we used it extensively for our VDI. So we started our VDI process about 14 years ago as well. Using the VMware solution. It was a great solution for us because, as you mentioned before, local government IT staffs are usually pretty small. It started out with just me, and then it moved into, I had a secondary employee as well. So that is a huge challenge for us. So using the VMware infrastructure with its complexity and all those kinds of things that come with it are, they're very hard when you have to, like you said, manage multiple departments. We've managed over 720 people in 23 departments. And 27 facilities across the county. That's quite a handful to deliver from two people. So if you weren't virtualized, you're never going to make it. So we have a stack that we use for our platform until we move to scale computing.
Okay. Now, when it was time to refresh that infrastructure, what other solutions did you explore or consider?
I didn't really explore much. The whole emphasis, because of the federal dollars, was just to basically forklift what we had there, right? Yank out the VMware infrastructure and put in a brand new one to match it, and let's just keep on trucking. But as we started to look, it's very expensive to do that. And one of the initiatives that our judge executive had kind of pushed forward was that we got to start thinking about this post-CSUP life. Those federal dollars are going to dry up. We're not going to be able to afford these things that we're affording now. We've got to find a way to pay for them. Sure. And basically, we didn't really look at anything until a chance meeting one day with one of our other vendors that we utilize, Simply Paperless. He said, hey, man, why don't we go to lunch? I got a couple guys that I want you to meet. And it happened to be the 13 Layers team that we met. I guess from that point on, it's been history, right? And that's where we got introduced to scale, and that's where we really fell in love with it. Able to find the cost and the ease of implementation, and it really has helped my staffing. If we didn't have the scale product and virtualization, we would have to have at least 2 more people. I mean, as you know, employees are your biggest cost as it is. So that's where we look at when we had the VMware platform, and that's how we kind of transitioned away into the scale platform. Was that post CSUP operations? We got to be able to move through and update this equipment without having to really spend a bunch of dollars at once. What we really liked about the scale computing was that you could take those nodes in and offline as they needed to be replaced, and they weren't as stringent as the VMware world. If you guys have dealt with VMware, you know that those nodes that you use in VMware have to match exactly to the hardware level. Now, those things are starting to ease a little bit here in the future, but that just wouldn't work for us. You're really left in a position where you have to almost forklift that, and that's not going to be something that Madison County can do in the future. So being able to slide those nodes out one by one and budget them in our budget year by year is really a big benefit for Madison County, because I could budget those kind of dollars to replace one at a time. So that's one of the biggest benefits to us, cost and from manpower and maintenance.
Yeah, kind of creating that rolling refresh model, right?
Yep.
So how long have you guys been running Scale Computing's HC3 platform?
So our first cluster went in October of 2019, and that's our production cluster that runs all of the servers for, kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but 911, the Sheriff's Department, our Emergency Operations Center, the CSUP program, the Judge Executive Office, you name it, there's 14 departments. We've also started to expand that just a little bit to some other outside agencies. We also, in that same iteration of 2019, put in a real-life DR a cluster down about 25 miles from our primary location. And that's the first time we've actually ever had a true disaster recovery location to actually go to. So that was exciting as well. And then in the midst of COVID, as everybody likes to talk about, which was back about, I think it was July, we noticed that the hardware we were on was getting ready to die. That VMware stuff was getting ready to tank on us. And, we just happened to make a call of 13 layers and said, what do you got? And they're like, you need to take a look at the scale option, which is scale and Leo stream. We took a look, we took a test drive, and again, the rest is history. It was so easy to put in, and we've been using that exclusively now for the entire county for our server production servers and for our virtual desktop environment.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate, so you guys obviously have now an environment that runs your production environment and also a dedicated environment for virtual desktop instances, correct?
That's exactly right.
Awesome. Now, what kind of applications and other services are you running, even in any of those environments?
So a lot of that, like our entire 911 infrastructure runs off of that. So their computer-aided dispatch model runs off of that. The Emergency Operations Center, all of their EOC techs that work in that center and do all the daily checks, that all happens on this infrastructure. We have the Square 9 platform that is our content management system that we use exclusively. We do things with that like we index our ordinances and resolutions for key-free searching, and those kinds of things are on that system. We also use part of their system called Global Forms. Our employees use that every day to insert data into the system to track it, whether you're buying an animal license, whether you're buying a business license, or you're interacting with the county. We are more and more pushing to that, and that all runs on this scale infrastructure, as well as their desktop that is running on that same infrastructure as well.
Oh, nice. So you've alluded to this kind of throughout our conversation today, but how would you say the cost savings have stacked up against what you were running prior to implementing scale computing back in 2019?
I'm going to tell you right off the cuff, it's cheaper, right? Getting into it was cheaper than a forklift upgrade of the VMware. But I think like what most people want to hear is I really feel like just a year or so into this that I don't really have a good handle on what all the cost savings are, because we haven't had enough experience to actually see all of the great benefits it's going to bring. Right off the bat, you could talk about just saving the money on the purchase, right? Saving money on the maintenance. I mean, we were in a position where we were having to buy spare parts to put in these servers when they're crashing. We were really in a world of hurt. So I think last time I did an interview with you guys, I thought I saved 50%, somewhere around that $75,000 to $100,000 just in the purchase. But I don't think I could even quantify the cost savings on human capital of managing the system, because managing the scale system compared to managing that VMware environment is completely different. We actually get time now to go do things that we've never done before, like develop the Square 9 platform and some other things that we'll talk about just a little bit later as we move through the presentation. But A cost savings is a huge benefit of the Scale platform.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think, too, one of the pillars that we stand on is the ease of use factor. And really, that's been a pillar of our business since 2011. We launched this product. But obviously, the autonomous management approach kind of buys into that. So has this been true in your experience? And has it changed you and your team's day-to-day management like you alluded to? And if so, can you kind of give us a little further explanation on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Has it changed what we do? We couldn't do what we do today without Scale. There is no way. Just 2 employees managing that kind of infrastructure, there's no way we could do it. We couldn't do, as we like to term it, the 50,000-foot things, right? We couldn't be talking about all these other things we're talking about. Cost savings post CSUP. How do you deal with all of these things as they start to wind down? We wouldn't be able to do any of that. We wouldn't be able to develop the programs that we're developing. So having just a staff of 2 people essentially that work on this infrastructure, that's really the goal to Scale for us, right? We don't have to get in there and mess with it. It seemed like in the VMware environment, every day there was something that had to be tweaked. Something was wrong. It wasn't running right. The Scale stuff, I hate to say, it sounds kind of cliche. It's plug and play, man. We got that stuff out of the box, racked it in the server, right? Hooked up the network cards and put some IP addresses on them, and boom, we had a cluster under an hour. You can't do that in VMware. Maybe better people can, but there's no way that we were. We just weren't doing it. This Scale stuff is unbelievable. Doing the same thing, trying to get the same level of disaster recovery with a VMware solution that we have with the Scale solution just was not going to happen. You really just put it up, you make some pointers, and you just tell it to start going, and it does it, and you check on it every few days to make sure those replications are working, and they always do. So we really could not do what we do without the Scale platform.
I'd love to hear it. Now, I know that you and we've been working together for a little while now, and you guys have your own acronyms in this industry. There's tons of them. But I know that you have multiple clusters and separate functions for those. You've kind of created some public clouds and things like that. Can you kind of go into a little bit more detail of really what you guys are doing with some of your environments, and then what that also means for surrounding counties?
That's awesome, right? That's really where the nuts and bolts of this all comes together, right? And we termed it the KCGC, which is the Kentucky Counties Government Cloud, and that is built on a Scale cluster of 3 nodes. So what's really awesome is that we were able to buy that with all county funds. So none of the CSUP money was actually used for this Kentucky Counties Government Cloud. This was all a local investment. Basically, it was all born from a judge executive in a surrounding county coming to meet with us. It was his first term as a judge executive, and a few of the executive team in Madison County just met with him to talk about, things that we look for and things that we do. And it turned into a meeting of, I want what you have. Well, the hard part about that was that I've been doing this for 14 years in Madison County to develop what we have and the systems that are in place, right? It just didn't happen overnight. Well, he wanted it, and he wanted to know the fastest way to get there. And the only thing that came to my mind was the fastest way to get there is to use my infrastructure. And this was something that kind of, in our world, was unheard of. We're going to do what for other people? We have a hard enough time to do it for ourselves, right? So why in the world would you offer it up? But it actually has turned into an interesting model. The counties that do surround Madison County are considered CSUP counties, and they do receive the federal money. Now, it's not the same amount of money that Madison County receives, but they do receive some. And they use that to fund their governments and to run their infrastructure and to do those things. And when that money dries up in 2023 or when it finishes demilitarization, they're all going to be struggling. So the thought was, can I build a cluster and offer it to these counties and be able to give them Square 9 platforms, give them server space? And it's already in a DR. We're blessed because we have that CSUP money that has built a data center right in our building. It's generated, it's got air conditioning, backup air conditioning, you name it, it's got it. It's a top of the line data center. And if I could just stick a few nodes in there and make a cluster, and essentially I've cost shifted, right? So anything that I was paying in maintenance can now be shifted off to them. So what they're paying us to be hosted in my cloud is paying my expenses. And that's really a model that Madison County is looking for post-CSUP, because we have got to find a way to think out of the box and find creative ways to reduce the cost that we have or find ways to pay for them. So that's what we've been tasked for. And this KCGC is one of those things that's going to help other counties because they don't have the talent. They don't have the money. They don't have the places to do the same kind of things. And if Madison County can actually step in and be their partner, we're different than a contractor, right? Because we can actually be a partner with them. We have their best interest at heart, and we're able to do those things with them instead of a contractor. And this is no baggage in contractors, but they're really worried about themselves most of the time.
Right.
The county government can actually step in and say, hey, this is what we're doing. We've done our homework. We've gone through all the legislative pieces. We've gone through all of that and figured out the right way to do it. And you can have that at a little cost, and we can all be partners in this KCGC. So it's really interesting. We already have one customer, Scott County government, who came to see us. They were the first ones to sign on. We're still working through the implementation, but the nodes are working and the network's in place, and we're working on that P2V strategy with them to get their servers into that data center. And as soon as that first one lands, I feel like it's going to take off like wildfire. And the beautiful thing is, as I get more customers, what do I do, Nick? I buy a couple more nodes, right?
Yeah.
I stick them in there, and my capacity goes up, and I'm in good shape. And it's that easy, right? The VMware, good luck. You can do it, but it won't be as easy. And this is not a VMware bashing contest, but I could take that scale node, plop it right in my existing cluster, and I've immediately added capacity and resources for them to spin up. So that's amazing, and this KCGC is really going to be awesome for us.
Yeah, we always love hearing of those interesting stories, because the cloud's that big buzzword that's out there, and the fact that you guys have then been able to take your knowledge and your experiences in the government to be able to go and be more, to your point, versus what a managed service provider might know. You know the day-to-day of the government because you're in it, right? So now it's obviously a more relationship built where it's you've got the resume for it, you have the experiences and things like that, so it just seems to make sense, right?
Absolutely.
So now I know the big thing too, and we've alluded to, you have multiple environments. Now let's talk about the unforeseen wrinkle that in almost everyone's DR plan happened was the pandemic and the work from home. Now your county has major interest in disaster preparedness, right? Given what you guys have with the government contracts and the militarization stuff. How did this sudden work from home initiative impact your team, the end users, as well as the infrastructure that you had on Scale Computing's HC3?
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation to talk about, like work from home. The government employees, they're going to go work from home. That was funny, right? Everybody kind of chuckles when you talk about that. But, Madison County is unique, and we've said it before, and they really are. The people that work in Madison County are just amazing. And having the infrastructure in place was really beneficial. We had a meeting late in March there as COVID was really coming to a culmination up there. With our deputy judge and our judge executive and HR, and it was like, we were talking like we think we need to start moving home. It's coming. We're dealing with all these things. Nobody's safe, right? The same conversations everybody was having. The judge was like, let's wait till next week. Let's wait till Tuesday, and that way we can brief everybody and we can kind of lay this thing out and roll on with it. We're not just abruptly showing up and changing the life of everybody, right? That was all good till about 9 o'clock that night. 9 o'clock on that Friday night, we got a phone call that said, hey, were you serious about sending people home and them starting work on Monday? Absolutely. We can do it. So we spent the weekend prepping our departments and talking to each employee through a Zoom call, getting them ready to work from home. At that point, we were using VMware still as our VDI solution. So basically, we started issuing out equipment on Saturday and Sunday, and employees had them in their hands with VPN tunnels set up and the client installed by 8 a.m. on Monday. The Madison County Fiscal Court, and this is important when you talk about work from home, when you talk about government and serving constituents and the best use of your tax dollars, right? The Madison County Fiscal Court missed 0 days of work during the pandemic. 0.
That's great.
Our offices were open 100% of the time to those folks that needed to interact with us the entire pandemic. Our judge executive got 0 complaints from people. 0 complaints from the constituents that they were not being served, that they weren't getting things in a timely fashion, or whatever it may be. Our county government offices were truly virtually open the whole time. Our people answered phones. They did all of their daily work remotely. And things that people, they thought they would never do, right? Oh, I could never do payroll from home. There's no way. We did a payroll within like 7 days of going into COVID, COVID lockdown, right? So we did it. Thanks to that virtual desktop infrastructure, which kind of comes back to that CSUP funding, right? Because of the CSUP funding, we were able to take a risk on VDI and be able to do those things. We rolled it out to our employees. They went home. They started work on Monday, and everything was awesome. About halfway through that kind of period, probably was about May, Nick, that we noticed the VMware infrastructure really started to flake on us. Now, the employees didn't notice it because we have redundant hosts and all those things in place. But the hosts had to keep being restarted. They had issues, memory issues, hard disk issues, you name it, right? We were dealing with it. And it was like, we've already talked about replacing this VDI infrastructure. We really need to do it now. So we actually were able to get the CSUP program to do some emergency reallocation of some funds to go ahead and get that in partnership with the county and purchase this new hardware. That's where the phone call kind of came in back into 13 layers, where we got back to scale and was like, let's take a look at this Leo stream. We actually deployed the Scale and LeoStream VDI solution in the middle of COVID remotely. None of my staff worked in their office. None of my other colleagues worked in their office, right? They all were working from home. That's how easy it was. We've deployed it sitting in our house. Now, we did it to show up and rack the servers, right? But other than that, we built the cluster remotely. We made the images remotely. We even P2V'd those images over from VMware into the LeoStream environment, and it was easy as cake. We even changed the clients. We did all that stuff remotely with all of our employees. It was about May or June that they actually started using that LeoStream solution remotely. And the experience between the VMware VDI and the LeoStream solution is like night and day. Now, some of that is because our VMware solution was a little older, right? We know that. But the ease of setting up the LeoStream, the ability to be able to build those machines on the fly, that's what VMware had always done, and we could do it. But it took us 35, 40 minutes to get the image to do what we wanted, to get it recloned. And then we'd have to have people log off, and there's all these steps. The LeoStream, man, we just took that thing, made the image, you shut it down, and you tell LeoStream to build new machines, and bada bing, bada boom, you got users using brand new computers with whatever it may be. So that was really exciting. And one other thing that was kind of awesome to experience and to be involved in was that through the CSUP program, they're required to have an annual evaluation. And usually those federal people come on site and they watch our response inside of our emergency operations center. They watch how we communicate inside of that. They watch how we communicate with people on the outside. And they also do some stuff where they watch how you decon, how you deal with schools, that kind of stuff. This year, just like everything else, right, we had to do that virtually. So we had the first ever virtual CSUP exercise. The only people that were actually in the emergency operations center were just some of the managers. None of the support agencies or support staff were actually there. They were all remote. We did all of that on the Scale platform. We had all of those people working remotely from home in computers doing all that work. We made a big use of the Square 9 platform. During that time with it as a response dashboard, all of those folks that needed access to the tools that they have in the EOC were able to get that through the Square 9 dashboard that we kind of built up that we called the response dashboard. It had all of those tools that they needed. So that was really a huge success for us as well. So not only were we able to send people home, we were actually able to respond to a mock event of a real disaster happening if it were to happen during a pandemic like this. So it's kind of cool to see all that come to life and to see all of that, really happen. And I guess I would kind of close my segment a little bit, Nick, by just saying, I have to say how impressed I am with my team directly, the guys that work with me, the guys and gals that work with me directly, I have to say. And then all of my colleagues at Madison County, they all deserve the credit on a job well done for this, work from home response. It was impressive to see everybody kind of rally together and still serve the constituents of Madison County with the superior level of service that they're really used to. I mean, Madison County is unique. They get all kinds of special attention, and we do service for them every day, and we do it well. It was amazing to see the employees be able to do that response from home. And a lot of those people had no idea we were even sitting at home.
Right. No, that's great to hear. Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll try to close with, now you doing the LeoStream, do you recall off the top of your head, how many users are you guys using, for the LeoStream deployment?
So right now it's 205 is what we're kind of licensed for. And a little bit of that is because we do have to have enough build up for the CSUP program. If there was a disaster to happen, we would spin up more machines for those people to actually respond. But essentially there's about 135 to 150 people logged in daily working off that LeoStream platform.
Now, I'll touch on this as I do my closing statements here, but do you have the additional peace of mind of the fact that when you have a LeoStream issue that you can call Scale Computing for support there?
Man, I had that in my notes to talk about it because it's actually it's something that my team and I kind of struggled with. I remember, and that we got a little bit of time, 4 a.m, we had a crash of our VDI system in VMware. When this has been a couple years ago. It wasn't too far before COVID, actually, to be honest with you. It crashed. It wouldn't work. We spent hours trying to get it back, and finally I was like, man, we're going to have to call support. So we called, and we got some guy, and he tinkered around, and he's like, well, I guess you're going to have to rebuild it. What? Yeah, just rebuild it. We're like, you don't just rebuild it. We have like 18 images. We have 150 people that rely on this. Like, they come to work in 3 hours. Our 911 center is down because of this. Like, that's not the kind of support that you pay for. At least that's not what I expect when I pay the kind of money we're paying. So turn that to scale, right? Luckily, we've not had any issues with scale, so good job. Right. Now, we've had some drive failures. We actually have had 2 chassis replaced. It's seamless, man. I call, I put in a ticket, they call me right back. They're like, let me get in there remotely. They can remotely access the system without my intervention by just turning on the code. They get in there, they look at it, they diagnose the problem, and they tell me what they're going to do. 2 instances, they've had to replace chassis. I've had them back in 24 hours with brand new chassis to replace them. You slide the drives out, slide the drives back in. They do a health check. You're back to working, right? That's all. We have drive failures. I say, hey, who's reporting a drive failure? Your guys jump in from scale support. They take a look. Yep. They mail us a new one. We flop it in and send it back. It's great. And then we did have an experience where something was happening with it. It was one of those chassis changes. I guess one of the nodes was causing an issue in the cluster. Your guys were the ones fixing the problem. It wasn't my team laying on the desk at 4 a.m, banging their head in it, trying to figure out what in the world we're going to do because these people are coming in at 8 o'clock. Your team worked all night long. They made it work, and it was awesome. Even my team and I commented after it was over. It's like, you know what? Hey, it was awesome not to be the guy that had the responsibility to try to make that thing work because your team was there with us. So for scale computing, 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10. I can't give it enough credit, and it's really not me just blowing smoke. It really is an honest opinion of what we've experienced through the transition and what we kind of had dealt with before. So we thank those guys at Scale for being a good partner with us.
No, we love to hear that. Well, we really appreciate your time again today. I think what I'll do to conclude this, I'll go over a little bit of what scale computing does, leave a little room for questions in case somebody has questions for Chris. He'll stay on the line. But Chris, thanks again. We'll talk to you here soon.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
So guys, what I'm going to do is then jump into just a little brief overview of scale computing. That way you guys can get this idea of what we're doing here. So you guys should be seeing my screen here. Let's see how well PowerPoint wants to work on a Mac. So kind of drive home of what we heard from Chris. This kind of shows you really what really what he alluded to, right? Kind of an overview. Some of the other customers that we have, we really built a foundation of small and medium business, but there will be some other names that you will know. The big thing that really drives, our quality of life here at Scale and the things that we, consider very admirable is the fact that we are the most well-rated and highly reviewed, HCI vendor out there. When I say HCI, that's hyperconverged infrastructure. Some of the other shifts that you'll see is we're also very well-rated in the edge computing market as well, which we'll touch on that briefly. So you can kind of see really who we are and who we're up against. Some of these other names may have more brand recognition than us, but we have the highest customer satisfaction rating. The thing that Chris had alluded to that's really great for anybody here, it's that the fact that I said Indianapolis, that's where all of our support sets. And the big thing for scale computing is we view the support as important as the hardware that we ship. So you don't have to really worry about, tiering that set support. It's all gold standard. There's no feature set parity. It doesn't matter if you buy a petabyte or a terabyte. You're getting the same 24/7 by 365 support of Indianapolis, the next damn parts and replacement like Chris alluded to, but also the same feature sets. So when you think about licensing structures and things like that, that's eliminated. Because really what we're doing within hyperconvergence is all 3 pillars. We're doing the servers, the storage, and including the hypervisor. So we don't need to then come in and still throw in that VMware tax or throw Hyper-V or something like that. So to really summarize what we're trying to do, it looks something like this. You can start with 3 nodes. Chris has got multiple clusters that started with 3 and they have been grown because we are called scale computing, right? So simplicity, once you feel like you're managing a single server, scalability, I just touched on that, high availability. Like Chris had mentioned, you can have multiple drive failure, chassis replacements. The uptime will still be there. But with all the things that we've talked about with affordability, the other cool component is that we are a complete stack owner. So if you guys have deployments that needs to be centric around building private clouds, trying to build data analytic platforms and things like that, we essentially have tons of flavors for you to choose from. So we have solutions that can fit in the size of your hand with our HE150 line. We have some half-rack models here that are built based off of Lenovo SR250. And then we go all the way to the 2U boxes if you have tons and tons of storage. So really what we're able to then do is kind of be your solution, whether it's edge or the core or the cloud or what's in the middle there, that is the fog. So really what we're able to do with the benefits of virtual desktop instances, which is obviously a big kick now that we have worked remotely, is that you get all of these, features. And the good news is, too, is we can actually protect against malware and ransomware, and we have partnerships for doing that. And the cool thing is that Chris kind of hinted at is that we actually do offer multiple different partnerships with different VDI vendors, and you actually can still call us for support. So that's where we try to be that one all-in-one stack owner, if you will. Now, I referenced edge computing. I'll touch on that briefly. That's really what we view as anything living outside of your four-made data center walls. So it doesn't have to be something where if you have a large storage array, you have the ability to really isolate what we're doing with scale computing for maybe just a VDI environment. Maybe it's for retail. Maybe it's for remote office branch offices. We've even seen use cases where production floors can now be replaced with smaller units to be out on the floor to gather data, and this help you avoid big network overhauls and things like that. So really drive home what we're doing is we're offering anything and everything, whether it's a private cloud, it's edge computing, it's remote data centers, it's disaster recovery, it's backup. You want to build your own public cloud, you want to tie into the cloud, you're able to do so. And then two, if you really want to try to do everything, we have a single pane of glass that we call Nucleus. So that then allows you to essentially manage everything from a centralized web-based management console. And what's cool with this, you can do effortless rollouts. So if you've got tons of sites, it can literally just be plug and play. Everything comes pre-configured. We come in, do health diagnostics, make sure everything's running good. And you don't have to now put IT staff out onto your remote office branch offices. So think about those remote sites where you don't have IT staff. Since it's next-gen parts and replacements, you don't need IT staff there. They can just literally plug and play, and we can coach them through that. So now that some of the big overhead costs of bodies can then be reduced because we are oversimplifying IT. So that's all I have to kind of wrap this up. I think we'll leave this last little section here for any questions in case people have them. So one of the questions was, what do you mean when you say HE3 can reduce licensing costs? So since that we are truly hyper-converged, that we have the hypervisor that is integrated, I guess my camera did go off there, is that it's not additional cost. So we are actually using KVM as our underlying hypervisor. It is an open source tool. So it has tons of market adoption, so you don't have to worry about doing server storage and then the VMware or the Hyper-V. And Chris, I had somebody ask the question, have you used the snapshot feature that's in HC3 and do you find it to be useful?
Absolutely. We use it every day. We take snapshots of our most important production machines every hour. Some of those other machines are every 4 hours, and some of our systems that don't need that kind of attention go every 8 hours. We take those snapshots, they're stored locally, and then with the actual feature of replication of those snapshots, we can actually replicate those snapshots from our Richmond location to our Berea location, which is about 25 miles away. And we store those there as well. It has come in handy sometimes when that user deletes that file and they want it back, right? It's very easy to go back into the snapshot, mount the drive onto a machine, and pull that file back out that they're looking for. So that has been a useful tool for us for sure, using the snapshots. And then in the bigger picture, if we were ever to have to lose our entire data center, if it caught on fire, it was surrounded in water, whatever it may have been, right? Those bare metal machines are being replicated through that snapshot feature to our Berea site where we can spin those machines up in a heartbeat and still offer the same services without any downtime.
Chris, another question for you. I'm not sure if you saw this one come in. Did you have to go through a lot of red tape to set up a quick work from home? And if yes, how did your team remedy it so quickly?
That's a great question. There was not a lot of red tape because it was kind of unprecedented. It was up to our deputy judge and our judge executive to make that decision. Basically what we did is we built a little, using that Square 9 platform with our document management system, we built a little global form, as it's called, and all of our employees just logged into that, and basically we had wrote up a basic work from home policy. Here's what's expected of you. Do you have internet at home? Do you have a phone? Do you have this, that, or the other, so that we can kind of get a good idea of what equipment they would have on site. They had to tell us where they would be working, and we basically just explained the rules of engagement, right? What are we expecting? Going home to work doesn't mean you're going to go home and sit on your couch, right? We're going to give you all the tools you're supposed to have, and we expect your job to be done. So that was really the only red tape, was to get all of those employees to do that. And they all did it quickly, right? Because I was able to send a link out to their email that they all have. They click the global form, they fill it out, and it got submitted to us. So we quickly were able to tell how many tablets we needed, how many hotspots I was going to have to order. This was unprecedented. We would never know about our employees if they've got internet access at home, if they have a cell phone, if they own a computer. We have no need to know that, right? But we had to know it in a moment's notice. So that's where the Square 9 platform came in really handy for us, which runs on the Scale hardware. Built that form within a few minutes with all the pertinent questions. We got that data right back from them. We were able to export it to a spreadsheet count. These employees have laptops. These employees have phones. I got to find a way to buy 5 laptops. I got to find a way to get 7 hotspots or whatever it may be. If we didn't have that, I'm not sure how we would have ever gotten done so quickly because you would have had to individually call everybody, right, and figure out exactly what everybody has. So as far as red tape, that's what we used was that Square 9 application to basically build that form, find out what they have, and quickly turn that around. We're just fortunate to actually have a little stockpile of, Surface Go tablets sitting there ready to go at their disposal. So it really was a Herculean effort, I guess, on our part. I'll pat ourselves on the back. It's pretty unheard of to see it, and to see it happen in the government is probably pretty astonishing for some people.
That's great. Another question is, what if I have small remote locations? Do I always need to install 3 or more hosts? Is it always large rack mount servers? So yeah, really to what we were able to do with scale computing, you can start with 1 node. Now 3 node is the minimum for high availability for creating a cluster, but a lot of times remote office, branch offices, high availability is not always key. When it comes to trying to use anything that's not rack mount, we actually have 2 different offerings. We do have tower form factors as well as our HE150s that's actually based off the Intel NUC. We actually had a really interesting deployment. The fact that, Acme Fresh Markets in Ohio was able to run, I think it's over 84 or something like that, Intel NUCs. They're in 3 at each store location to run custom applications, customer loyalty programs and things like that. And they just put those basically on a desk or in a closet somewhere. So there are rack mounts available for those. SimplyNUC.com has a whole ecosystem for that. But we're really the only hyperconverged vendor that can go that small due to the way we've done storage. But we can always touch on that on a one-to-one conversation. And I think the other question I see here is this host in a cloud somewhere, or does it require a cloud connection? So I think this question, I can answer it, and I think, Chris mentioned it too. What we're able to do with that is it does not require cloud connections to function. The hardware can run locally if you choose, but if you do prefer to run it hosted, you got tons of data center options, you got managed service providers, or just find out if your local county government offers any type of services for that, like Chris has done with the KCGC.
Give us it all.
Exactly. I don't know if I see really any other questions rolling in, but we'll give them a couple minutes before we conclude this. I will point out that we will be in our booth shortly after this, so if anybody wants to stop by the Scale Computing booth to ask any questions, I think some of my team members are probably there now, but we can certainly take any of those questions. Otherwise, you can always try to reach out to us. My team can be reached at Ohio Valley at scaleComputing.com, and then our friends at 13 Layers, you can reach them at consulting@13layers.com. But you can certainly reach out to us right after this event. We can get you more information if needed.